Good evening and welcome into Tunnel Vision. I'm your host, Jack Smith, joined in studio by Ryan Abraham and Connor Morrissette to preview USC's Saturday game against Nevada. We've got so much to talk about, including some situations that are still bubbling over that we'll start with in a second. But we're previewing USC's game against Nevada. As always, make sure to leave your comments on YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching, and we can get them on the screen. And if you want to call in and talk to us at the end of the show, you can call in at 5124-TUNNEL. But this is our first Tunnel Vision together, you guys, so I'll just say it's really nice to be in the studio with you.
Woohoo! Great to be here. Thank you,
Nice.
Jack and Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had a lot of different lineups. We do the good thing at USCFootball.com is we have a huge team, and so Connor just joined us almost 2 months ago, a month and a half ago, or whatever, and had unfortunately a fall wedding. We'll give him a break because it was week 0. Maybe he didn't know. His college roommate, so he wasn't here for the first game, but he's here now. So we're going to be part of the Tunnel Vision preview shows on Thursdays, and I think he'll be here on Sunday as well, doing the recap. Jack's back. He's back in school. I'm back. We're ready. We're
ready to rock.
We're into the different lineups every week, maybe. It'll be fun.
I think they call it competitive depth.
We do have competitive depth. We're sort of like the USC defense. We got a lot deeper than we were last year.
Don't want to rotate too much, though.
That's true.
Yeah, we got to make sure that we can be consistent despite the lineup changing. But let's start it off by talking about a situation that has kind of been developing over the last, maybe hour or 2 hours. And it was the first comment here on YouTube, PMJ13, asking, what in the world is going on with the Christian Roland-Wallace situation?
Yeah, so we'll jump into that first because that's sort of like an interesting thing. Very Pac-12 of this. So luckily, we have a good network here in the Pac-12, and I was looking at Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, earlier. And so Jason Scheer, who covers Arizona for 24/7 Sports, Wildcat Authority, and Chris Cartman does a great job covering Arizona State over at Sun Devil Source. So apparently, I was texting both of those guys, and Arizona State was aware of the two players, and let me pull up I'll get the names for you guys of which players they were. It's Will Schaefer and Eli'jah Badger were both involved in the Territorial Cup last year in a brawl, and there was ejections, and those two guys were ejected. On the Arizona side, Christian Roland-Wallace was involved, and there was another player. Scheer, I think, gave it to me. I forget who it was, but yeah. So they have another player that was involved in the brawl. So the players were ejected. It was in the second half. So by rule that you're supposed to sit out the first half of the next game, and the next game would be the first game of the 2023 season. Now for Arizona State, that's this weekend. For USC, it was last weekend. Kenny Dillingham, according to what Chris Cartman told me, the head coach of Arizona State, was aware for the last 2 weeks that these players weren't going to be able to participate in the first half of their opener tonight against Southern Utah. I think it's Southern Utah.
Yep.
And so according to Cartman, those guys weren't running with the ones in practice. So they were aware of this. This was going on, whatever. Well, on the other side, Jason Scheer asked Jed Fish, the head coach of Arizona, that question today. And he was like, what? Like he didn't know. So Scheer said, yeah, I basically told him, and now he has to look into it. Well, then what happens with Christian Roland-Wallace? Because he was involved in that. He was ejected. He played last week. He played the first half. Did USC know? And there's a lot of trolling. So if you're looking on Twitter or X, David Woods will jump in, Jason Scheer. They love to troll. They're like, oh, yeah, USC should forfeit the first game. That's the way it's going. That's not going to happen. But there's some trolling. Don't let them rope you into that. But it's kind of funny that that's what's going on. So Christian Roland-Wallace played for USC. And looks like he should have sat out. Now, we don't know the clarification. There's no, he transferred schools. I think that carries with you. We saw this I think Cameron Smith, there's one of the USC linebackers got suspended like a few years back, like in the last game, the second half of the last game, had to sit out the first half of the opener the next year. Obviously, if you move on to the NFL or something, but I think if you transfer schools, it would still like apply. I'm guessing no one told USC. They weren't unaware of it. The Pac-12 is obviously crumbling. They probably have a skeleton crew up there. There's not really on top of all the news of what's going on. So I don't really know. I've reached out to a USC spokesperson, haven't heard back, but I at least found out what's going on from the ASU side. They've been aware of this. Arizona was not. And so that's kind of where we are right now. My guess is it's going to be something like, hey, he shouldn't have played. He's going to have to sit out the first half of Nevada or something. Like, I'm guessing that's what's going to happen. But this has really just been happening the last couple of hours. But any thoughts there?
The ghost of Lynn Swan strikes again because if USC doesn't have a week 0 game, they find out about it yesterday or today. Christian Roland-Wallace can sit out on Saturday, and there's no problem. But the fact that he played, it sounds like that might be a potential problem. I hope cooler heads will prevail, and the smart decision that can be made is made where he just sits out the first half of this next game against Nevada if that's what has to happen, and then there's no problem. But, man, USC, I guess, technically fielded an ineligible player, it sounds like. So I don't know what that means, what the fallout is from that. In the Pac-12, you're right. Has anyone ever been in this situation where a penalty didn't happen because the conference is crumbling? It's crazy. What an unprecedented situations going on right now, but I couldn't not think of Lynn Swan when you mentioned it.
I love that you brought it back to Lynn Swan. What he's referring to is the reason USC played the week 0 game is because Lynn Swan decided to buck tradition and schedule an FCS opponent in UC Davis. And then when Mike Bone and Brandon Sosta came in to fix it, they had to move the schedule around, and they brought in San Jose State. San Jose State, that game was a replacement for what was going to be UC Davis. Well, that's gone, but they had to play the game in week 0 to make it work. So, yes, if he wouldn't have scheduled UC Davis, USC wouldn't have had a week 0 game this year, and then they wouldn't have played Christian Roland-Wallace, which apparently he shouldn't have played, but it's kind of funny.
My question is, like, what if he had transferred out of the conference? Would he have been suspended for the first half of the game with, maybe he's in the SEC, who knows? Like, if he's at Florida right now, is he not able to play in this game in the first half against Utah? Like, is it just a conference thing? It's just such a weird situation.
Yeah.
So many questions. And how do we get an answer? Will the Pac-12 release something? What happens?
Yeah, we don't know. I'm hoping to hear back from USC on that. I mean, if you're like worried about stuff, there's probably other things you can worry about than this. But it is just kind of an interesting story. And my guess is it's like no one told USC. And I don't know, maybe Christian Roland-Wallace should have known and said something. Or I don't think people were aware. The fact that Jed Fish was involved in the game and wasn't aware, I think, as far as USC goes, like they weren't involved in the game. They were looking at playing the Pac-12 championship game. That was the final game of the season for both Arizona and Arizona State. So that's it. Like that's the last, memory you have of the season. So if Jed Fish wasn't aware, I don't know how you want Lincoln Riley to be aware of it. But
this sounds like someone at Arizona State told Kenny Dillingham, because if the Pac-12 told him, they would have told Arizona at least. Maybe they would have forgotten that USC had a couple of Arizona transfers and wouldn't have gone that far down the rabbit hole. But if the Pac-12 had told Arizona State, they certainly would have told Arizona as well. So I think someone in the Arizona State administration, I guess they've had a tough week, but we can give them some credit for telling Kenny Dillingham that 2 guys couldn't play because they were suspended for the half based on what happened last year. I know there's all sorts of problems going on at ASU, but credit to them, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny. ASU's got some USC vibes going on right now. They wrapped a couple of like vans or big trucks that say like only you, like it was like Smokey the Bear or whatever. It's like only you can save ASU athletics. Fire Ray Anderson, who's their athletic director. He's someone that it's like very Lynn Swanee. Like he's someone that definitely shouldn't have that job, but he does. He survived somehow hiring and getting Herm Edwards fired. He's still there. It's just baffling. And the fact that they took a bowl ban like a few days before the season with your rookie head coach and an exciting team, and it's pretty.
And just that they're paying him when they could have fired him for cause with these sanctions from the NCAA. He violated rules, fire him for that, but they fired him, or they let him go without cause, and so they're still paying him right now.
They're paying.
It's a shame.
Yeah, it is pretty bad. So ASU is pretty.
That's why we should be all so happy with Jen Cohen, someone who has a lot of experience and knows what she's doing. That's huge. I think a good AD can do a decent, solid job, but a bad AD can set you back years, and
Yeah.
we've seen that here.
We've seen it with Arizona State for sure.
Yeah,
and if you guys know, the Utah and Florida game's going on right now. So I know we wanted to do this a little early today because I want to watch the second half of this game. It's a big one.
Yeah, I want to watch it too.
And maybe I have a fantasy football draft later. I'm not saying. I'm just saying, but I'm not saying.
I have
But
one
yeah.
next week, and we'll talk about what that entails.
All right. We do have to talk about timing for the show. What we do. We would normally be doing 7. We can continue doing that. I don't know. It depends what you guys want, but let us know in the chat box.
I don't. Oh boy,
Utah just hit on like an 80-yard touchdown. That was sick.
Nice.
the cameras were shaking. I think because the fans are so excited there. Yeah, I'm not sure how many marquee Thursday night college football games that we're going to get for the rest of the season. But then again, there's also going to be NFL Thursday night football. So
That's true, yeah. But this is, Utah's important. They've won the Pac-12 2 years in a row. USC gets them at home this year, but and it's good for the Pac-12. I know it's the last year, but you want USC's resume to be built up a little bit. It looks a lot better when you beat Utah that beat a Florida team than lose to a Utah twice that lost to a Florida team. So you'd like at least that little resume boost going on. It's a big weekend for the Pac-12, and then for USC too.
yeah, I think they'd also like to not run into a Utah team that's needing to avenge a loss early in the season like they did last year. Like I'm sure that Utah was extra fired up with the coaching staff that they have after losing week 1 last year. So if you're USC, even though it is a rival of yours, I don't think you want to see them lose here in week 1.
Yeah, and apparently I don't know. I don't have Spectrum TV, but apparently Spectrum TV and ESPN are having a little bit of a kerfluffle or whatever you say, and they've cut off the ESPN feed. So if you have Spectrum at home, you might not be able to watch the game.
I was having issues with Spectrum. I had to get the cable guy at my house today fix the TV, and it's good, but I didn't know I can't get ESPN.
That's what
You can get tunnel vision, though.
That's what I heard. Yeah.
Looks like I'll be streaming it.
Or just watch the replay to this show. But anyways, we've got to preview the game against Nevada this weekend. We mentioned that San Jose State last week. They're a team that, might compete for the Mountain West. I'm not sure we can say the exact same thing about Nevada. A really tough year last year, but as kind of we look at this team, a general overview, what do you guys see from the Wolfpack?
1 second. Sorry, I'm just getting. You want to start? 'Cause
Sure.
I'm getting some information on the Christian Wallace thing. So hold on.
Back to that shortly. Well, Ryan today did a podcast that came out about an hour ago with Chris Murray, who covers Nevada. And one of the most interesting things he talked about was how he predicted the Wolfpack to finish 8th in the Mountain West. So that'll tell you all you need to know. A below-average Group of 5 team. That's sort of, and the spread told us that too. 38 USC's favored by, but a team that had an awful year last year. They've lost their last 10 games. Started 2-0 last year and then went 2-10. So just a program that's trying to turn things around, and they're going to go up against a buzzsaw in USC. So just overall, the spread tells us all we need to know. But the fact that Chris picked them to finish 8th in the Mountain West, I think that's just another layer to this. They're not that good.
No, yeah. Chris Murray did a great job. We put a podcast up earlier today. I talked with him for about half an hour or so. You might check it out. But I want to get into this because I want to talk about Nevada for sure. But I got this from Jason Shear, and the quote he was given was, all 4 student athletes with the remaining eligibility involved in the Arizona State at Arizona altercation, not brawl, near the conclusion of the final game of the 2022 season will serve their first half suspensions in week 1 of 2023 per NCAA rules.
Oh, okay.
So they're going to serve it in week 1, which I
Great.
guess it's not the first game.
We love a loophole.
It's week 1. So it was week 0 last week. So that's the thing. The USC spokesperson told me to contact the Pac-12. So I'll do that, Jim, over at the Pac-12. But it sounds like from what Jason just sent me, sorry, they're doing this live. Yeah, so it's a week 1 suspension. It's not a first game or that might just be the way it was worded. And so, yeah, so I don't think there's no harm, no foul kind of thing. USC doesn't have to go to the free throw line or anything. So that's
Shout
good.
out to Ryan for getting to the bottom of this. Show started at 5. It's 5:14, 14 minutes, and we got that squared away. So USC fans don't have to worry about anything. You won't see Christian Roland-Wallace, it sounds like, in the first half. But you didn't see a lot of them on defense in the first half in the first game. So now you can play a lot in the second half, and everything will be good.
Yeah, Jalen Smith was the leading tackler for USC, but I thought we'd see a lot more Christian Roland-Wallace. He looks so big, and his arms are like defensive lineman arms, and he's playing corner, which is great. You love to see that. But he got some special teams work. Maybe we'll see him a lot more in the second half. We'll have to kind of see.
It was interesting. He played more boundary corner than nickel corner.
Yeah.
Or nickel safety, I guess. And I thought, a lot of people thought that he would, if Jalen Smith was the first nickel safety, that Christian Roland-Wallace would definitely be the second one, and that he probably still is, but he did play a lot of nickel safety in that first game. He took over for Damani Jackson and C.A. Wright at times as the boundary corner, which I thought was interesting.
All right.
If I'm not mistaken, I think he's the only player on the depth chart that's listed under multiple positions.
Yeah, really versatile, and Dante Williams has talked all about that, how he's so experienced, and when he takes a rep, you can just tell how experienced he is because he does so well at so many different spots. They say he can play safety, too, and I bet they've tried him out a little bit. I will believe it when I see it. I don't think he's going to play too much safety for this team, but they say he can, so that's another versatile spot for him, too.
Yeah, apparently there's people in the chat that can't watch the game and they're
Oh,
upset.
jeez, that's what I'm going to be getting into when I get home.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, so my apologies for not diving right in to Nevada, because I did have a really long and interesting conversation. When USC plays teams like from the Mountain West or other Group of Five programs, it's different. Like, we have multiple media outlets that cover the Trojans. Like I covered Fresno State for a little while. They have TV stations. They have a newspaper. They'll have, beat writers. It's a big kind of deal there. Some places like Nevada, there's one or two guys that are covering the team, and they might have a blog, but they don't go to practice. So Chris Murray had been a newspaper guy up there. He's covered this team for over 20 years and is part of the Nevada Sports Network. So he's on TV a lot, talking about UNR, up there in Reno. So he's really good knowledge of there, but there's limited number of people that actually just cover the team, just because it's like a smaller market and all that. But I love the insight. If you want to look at the Peristyle podcast, we didn't do any video; it's all on the audio version of it. So I know Connor listened on his way over, so it's pretty cool. So he can kind of give you more details. But from what we were kind of gathering, and Connor, you mentioned it. Going 2-10 last year. 10-game losing streak, probably not going to end that against USC, but there is room for optimism. And I think when you look at San Jose State, they, at quarterback, Chevin Cordero is the preseason Mountain West Player of the Year. He's legit. And USC's defense had problems with him. Shouldn't have as much problems with Nevada, but they will be better. Jay Norvell left, prior to last year. A lot of it has to do with just the resources that are available at Nevada. He tripled his salary, basically a lateral move. He goes to Colorado State, triples his salary, bigger salary pool for his assistants, better facilities. So it's hard for Nevada to keep people like that. But Ken Wilson was around there. Chris Altman, the coach there 3 times, he was an assistant of his for a really long time, was around the Pac-12 a little bit. He's taken over. But the problem was when Norvell left, he took 14 dudes with him. And so the roster was pretty depleted last year. They brought in a few transfers, but they brought a lot of transfers this year. At least a dozen Pac-12 players. Now, these aren't Pac-12 starters or kind of past Pac-12 castaways. But over the last 2 years, 25 Power 5 players have transferred in. So I think there's going to be an infusion of talent for this Nevada team. So they should be a lot better. Maybe a 4 or 5 win team from a 2-10 team last year. Not something that USC is going to worry about losing the game, but can you dominate? And, that's what's going to be interesting to see. My gut is USC will be able to dominate this game. The bigger weaknesses for Nevada on the offensive side, it's the offensive line. They gave up, I think it was 70-something sacks over the last 2 years. And I love the way USC only got 1 sack, but they had 6 tackles for loss, I think, in the game, and really active up front. I think they're going to cause a lot of problems and disruption. And Cordero was just running away from people. Brendon Lewis, I don't think he's going to be able to do that, and we'll talk about him in a minute. And then on the defensive side, the secondary, specifically the safeties, are kind of a weakness. Well, you don't want that to be your weakness when you're playing the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. So I think I wanted to get a feel for how much better can Nevada be than they were last year, because they were really hot garbage last year. And I think they will be better, but still, it's a 38-point spread for a reason. I think the last time Nevada was a 35-point underdog, it was Florida State or something, and they got, absolutely boat raced.
Florida State won the title that year.
Yeah, that was So I'm thinking, and we'll do a picks and stuff at the end, but I think this is a spread that USC can handle. I think San Jose State's like, they could, be up there in the top of the conference. They got one of the better players in the conference, and USC had some trouble. I'm not seeing a lot of areas where USC is going to have trouble with Nevada, and if they do, it's going to be a pretty big problem.
Go ahead, Jack.
I was going to say, I don't think it even matters if the safeties are the strength of your defense against Lincoln Riley. Like, I feel like if you're going to beat USC, the strength of your defense has to be on the defensive line. Like, you could have the best secondary in the country, and I'm like, you're still going to have some issues. Notre Dame, who has a really great secondary, they struggled, and then USC decided, well, even though they've got a strong secondary, we're just going to have Caleb Williams run it a lot. So, like, unless the strength is your defensive line, I feel like Lincoln Riley can pick apart most defenses. And as you mentioned, I think it was interesting to see the comparison of how do people think San Jose State's going to play this year in the Mountain West compared to Nevada, and even the people that are optimistic about Nevada, maybe a 4 or 5 win team. I'm expecting San Jose State to go to back-to-back bowl games, so you're just seeing the talent drop off at least from the 2 Mountain West teams the USC's playing early on.
Yeah.
Ryan, you talked about the offensive line for Nevada, and I'm saying Nevada now. I'm not going with Nevada. Everyone else is saying Nevada. I'm saying Nevada. The fact that the USC defensive line looked good, I should say, I guess, better than decent last week, only had the 1 sack. Yeah, and they've played a game. I think that's huge. The Nevada offensive line I don't expect to be very good at all. So I think this defensive line, which I think is the strength of the USC defense, should really pop. I'm looking for Barrett Alexander to have a big game. I think Jamil Muhammad will have another big game. Jack Sullivan should be good. Their best player on offense, in my opinion, Nevada, is Sean Dollars, who went to Mater Dei, so some people might be familiar with him. He was at Oregon, transferred to Nevada. The running back, Jack Sullivan, is really good against the run. I look for him to slow down Sean Dollars a little bit. I just think this game will come down to the USC defensive line dominating, doing really well, forcing turnovers, and I think that's how you cover a big spread. Your defensive line gets a lot of pressure and forces turnovers.
Yeah. They didn't have any turnovers against San Jose State. I like that. And then there's also USC connection with Nevada. Like, the John Jackson III just transferred in. It's his final year of eligibility. So he's kind of one of the oars on there. So he'll probably get some run at wide receiver. So you remember, his dad's a USC legend. He was at USC for a long time. And Eli'jah Winston came in. He was there last year. And he came in at a middle linebacker, and they moved him to rush end. And he had a pretty productive end of the season. Chris Murray actually just interviewed him. I think it was today or earlier today. And his goal was 15.5 sacks. Chris was saying he's going to take the under on that, but he likes it. I don't even think he's listed really as the starter, but he's probably going to get a lot of snaps. So watch for Eli'jah Winston. He's former Trojan. He's going to be out there rushing the passer. Jason Rodriguez, if you remember, offensive lineman, former 4-star recruit, did transfer in there. And, Chris said that he didn't last very long. He ended up medically retiring. So, which kind of what he did at USC, and then he went in the portal and went to Nevada, and then now I'm saying it all weird too. Now I'm thinking about it.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. And so he's not there anymore. But some USC connections, like you mentioned, Sean Dollars coming in from Oregon. They got a bunch of players from Cal. Another guy from Oregon. But the one that you might be familiar with is Brendon Lewis, the quarterback. So he won the quarterback job for UNR there, and he was at Colorado, started most of 2021. If you remember, USC in 2021 was they were hot garbage.
I don't think people listening and watching remember much of that season. I think they've chosen to forget about it.
Yeah, if you remember, USC lost to Stanford. Clay Helton gets fired. Dante Williams becomes the interim head coach. They go on the road and beat Washington State. Everyone's excited. They get a win against Colorado on the road, and Colorado was pretty bad, but USC ended up 4-8 that season. But they did beat Colorado, and Lewis was pretty awful. He got sacked 5 times, was picked off. He was like 10 of 17. He didn't do very much. And that's with a pretty crappy USC team. So a crappy USC team with a fired Clay Helton beat up on Brendon Lewis. I mean, I'm not sure, he's going to be like the difference maker. I think they're pretty excited about him, what he could do. He's mobile, very athletic quarterback. But I feel like it's going to be, he's not going to look like what Cordero looked like last week. I think he's going to, like Connor mentioned, probably going to get sacked a bunch, a lot of pressure. I think they're just going to be very active, getting after it. And, you're going to probably see more 3-and-outs, maybe a few turnovers, things like that. But, yeah, so some familiar names and faces and opponents that USC's seen before will be in this game, but I just think it's not going to be enough, especially with a porous offensive line. I think that's going to be problematic for Nevada.
Yeah, I wonder whether USC fans like to think more about the 2021 season or Alex Grinch's defense. Which it's funny. I feel like they think those are at the same level, despite the fact SC's lost 3 games and 2 of them by like 1 score since Grinch got. I get the feeling reading some of the chats sometimes. It's like, this team went 4-8 2 years ago. Would you prefer that? But yeah, you mentioned Brendon Lewis. I remember watching that game and him being the starting quarterback for Nevada this week. It's not as big of a threat as Chevin Cordero is, who came in with tons of experience. And I said it last week that he was kind of built in the way that you need to be as a quarterback to beat USC. Being able to make throws, but really being able to escape the pocket and make plays with your legs. If you can't do that, you're probably not going to have the greatest time against USC. I remember the Oregon State game last year. It was one of the only quarterbacks that SC played that didn't have the biggest running threat, and ended up being the interception game, maybe the best the defense looked at any single point in the season last year. So as you guys mentioned, I'm not sure how big of a threat that Nevada poses, but I don't want to. I hate to break up the rhythm here. We do have a super chat from Only Natties at USC Part 2. Just getting to it, but we got to break it up on screen. He says, Ryan Abraham is the man. He should thank his dad, who has excellent judgment about the state of USC football, with an exclamation point.
So what he's referring, thank you for the super chat, by the way. Yeah, we haven't had one of those for a while, so that's nice.
We had one last week without you, I think.
Oh, so I don't show up and we get a super chat. That's great. Yeah, so I'm like, when things don't go quite right, people jump on the Alex Grinch thing. They were like, really upset. It gets tiring reading through all the tweets and message board posts and everything. If you're not on the Peristyle, make sure you get on there. Still 50% off right now, so go check it out. The P is crazy. A lot of fun stuff over there, but a lot of Grinch threads. And literally my dad, my dad loves sports, but he'll call me like Caleb Williams will win the Heisman. Like, this is my job to cover the team. And he'll call hey, did you see that Caleb Williams win the Heisman? Like, yes, Dad, I saw that. That's my job. I was there at the ceremony, things like that. That's sort of what he does. And he just was texting me about how they needed to fire Grinch. And I'm like, so I tweeted something out, like, even my dad's blowing up my phone, telling me to fire Grinch and stuff. So that's what Natty's is referring to. So he agrees with my father. So you wouldn't want to agree with him most of the time. So I'm just saying that.
Well, I think he probably agreed that Caleb Williams won the Heisman, so maybe a second thing he would have agreed on.
But thanks for the super chat. That's great.
I think the other thing that we have to talk about with Nevada, and it was brought up by Lincoln Riley today as well as Caleb Williams yesterday, it's another team that USC is playing that doesn't have any tape on them this season. Of course, they have to prepare for San Jose State, knowing that San Jose State hasn't played a game yet this year. Now USC has a game on tape that Nevada can go and watch, but USC is still looking back to last year's Nevada team, and as we've mentioned, even though they're not going to be great, it is still a different team than the team that lost 10 straight to end last year, but USC kind of has to go on maybe tendencies from the head coach and defensive coordinator, at least according to Caleb Williams, who are both in their second year, and they kind of have to just piece together, okay, here's what they did last year, but also you can't put too much stock into that because it is going to be a new team. It's going to be a new week.
Yeah, it's funny. I did the podcast with Champions. This is like my 3rd show today, by the way, but the podcast with Champions earlier, and we brought this up with David Woods about playing a game. Because Oregon State, a lot of people think they could do well. They have to play San Jose State on the road. San Jose State's already played a game, even though they got beat up a little bit. I mean, they've already played. Stanford's going on the road playing Hawaii. Hawaii played in week 0 against, Vanderbilt, and USC's already played. His kind of point was, and I like this, is if you're like UCLA, where you're sort of you're playing someone and you want to get some tendencies and you're trying to dial up what you need to do. It's good to have film on what he's doing. If you just completely outmatch, man for man, does it really matter? You just kind of do what you do and just sort of see what Nevada does. I don't think it matters quite as much. It's probably, for me, it's better to get that seasoning, to get the first hits out of the way and got to get some playing time, get some more time in pads on the field, hitting people that aren't wearing your colors. I think that's more important. I mean, obviously this one doesn't matter, but say USC was playing like Florida today or something instead of, or Saturday instead of Nevada, then then you're talking hey, this might be, they have enough athletes that we would be better to know kind of what they're doing. But I think in this case, it doesn't matter that much. So for them saying, yeah, we don't have any tape on them, you don't really need tape on them. you and any of us could probably be the quarterback and beat this team, but we'll see.
Totally agree with you and David's point there. And looking ahead to next season, you mentioned Florida. USC opens with LSU.
I was just going to say that, yep.
Both teams are probably going to have new quarterbacks, although we'll see. Caleb Williams, people are starting to think if Arizona tanks in the NFL, maybe he wants to come back. I don't know. We'll see. But then you don't have any film on a Power 5 SEC quarterback, and who knows what they're going to do. You kind of throw it all out the window. So you're right. When you're so much better talent-wise than Nevada, it really doesn't make a difference. Like I've said all week, the spread kind of tells you everything you need to know about this matchup.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, USC didn't cover last week, but there was a world in which they would have, if that
onside kick.
The onside kick.
Oh,
Yep.
that was so frustrating.
The good news is that we all got it wrong. So it's not like Ryan took an early preseason lead with our team picks. But now it's a little bit bigger. And I think if you don't see USC go out there and be more dominant against San Jose State, then maybe you can start to react a little bit. I thought, the way that fans were reacting to the first game of the season against a team that I think people were kind of underselling in San Jose State, maybe a little bit of an overreaction. But if they don't go out there and really put the hurt on Nevada, I think then the questions start to creep in a little bit more.
I didn't have too big of a problem with the overreactions on defense, Jack, to the San Jose State stuff, just because, and Ryan, you made this point on the Peristyle podcast, all offseason we've been hit over the head with, we have so much more competitive depth, we're going to make a statement, last year was last year, and then to make some of the mistakes they made, you kind of are out of excuses when you say all the stuff that they said this offseason. So I think that's where the frustration comes from. People just want them to prove it and just play better overall. So I didn't have a huge issue with it. I get what you're saying, but I think people were right to be frustrated.
No, I think people certainly have a right to be frustrated. I'm just giving from what I saw. Yeah, I think the heavy rotations, but the activity on the defensive front was a lot better to me. And you saw a quarterback make some good plays. There were some defensive breakdowns. I know people have broke down film saying, why are you making some exotic coverage? You haven't played very much. Just get out there and play man or whatever you need to do, and you'll probably be in a good situation. You just can't have a bust, and they had a bust, and they give up a touchdown right before half. I feel like stuff like that is at least correctable. And if it's not, then, if it's not correctable by this staff, there's a defensive staff that there would be correctable by. There's enough talent there that you can win with this. But I would just say, looking in the offseason, they added a lot of pieces, and my gut is you're going to get more stops from this defense than you would from the defense last year. We'll be able to say, it's the same. They're just going to suck. And, even with a really crappy defense last year that people didn't like, you're a whisper away from making the college football playoff. I still think this is a better defense than last year. It's better of a defense than the schedule got harder. The schedule got harder, so it's harder to do that. But I feel the defense got better by a wider margin. Now maybe I'm wrong. If they give a bunch of points to Nevada here, that's going to be a problem. I agree with you guys, but I feel like you're going to get a lot of 3-and-outs. Maybe you give up a weird touchdown or something. They have a really good field goal kicker. He's the all-time leader in the Mountain West. USC, that's one thing I wanted to see is force some field goals, and they didn't really get to do that. They just kind of make mistakes. Even when you get a little momentum, you get a stop, then defensive penalty or something happens, and you end up scoring. I just don't think you're going to see the Wolfpack be able to do that much. So the defense should probably keep them, 14 points or something like that. And then, a clunky offense last week against a better San Jose State defense scored 56, or, I guess one of them was a special teams touchdown. The over-under on this is 66 points. I'm taking USC minus 38. I'm taking the over. I think they're going to score a lot, maybe give up a little, and, win by 40 or something. But we'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just sort of my gut feeling on this whole thing.
One thing USC fans can take away from this is Brendon Lewis can run, just like Chevin Cordero could. So the offensive line for Nevada is worse, but it's a running quarterback again, and you just hope the defense takes a step forward and does better against a running QB compared to last week when they had some issues. If you can see growth, even if it is a little bit different with the O-lines, I think that's important, and that's definitely something I'm looking for. Slow down the running quarterback on a broken play. Didn't really do it as well as you would have liked last week. Can you make that adjustment and get it right this week?
Yeah, I think Cordero's significantly better than Lewis.
Yes.
We'll see. Maybe not.
He is.
That's sort
Lewis didn't win the job at Colorado. Was 1-11 last year. He didn't win the job.
Yeah, so he can run, but I just don't think it's going to be the same. And like I said, USC sacked him with a crappy defense 5 times. I think they're going to be able to, with Bear Alexander and all those guys, I think they're going to be able to get after him a little bit. But it'll be fun to see. Watch, I like. I know it's the last season of the Pac-12, but I would watch some of these games. Watch what Oregon State does. They're going to San Jose State. They're like a 16.5-point favorite. Like, I'm taking San Jose State to cover that game, and I like Oregon State a lot this year. But I think San Jose State's not bad. I think they're going to keep that one close. Maybe not. Maybe Oregon State goes in there, blows them out, and then you're like, man, that's
that would be.
Ryan was wrong, and I've been wrong before. But that's sort of my gut, sort of going into this to see.
Do you think Oregon State regrets, like, because obviously they didn't know they were going to be like a ranked program probably coming into the year. Do you think they regret scheduling the game in San Jose?
This is so freaking Pac-12. You have Oregon State playing on the road at San Jose State. Like, how in the world? That was like USC's replacement game for UC Davis. And it's like, how did that happen? Cal is going to They flew to Dallas, and they're playing North Texas on the road. California is playing North Texas. Stanford going to Hawaii. Now that's the vacation. Like, that's pretty cool.
Okay.
Washington State going to Colorado State. They're playing we have all these Pac-12 road games. I might have been missing one there too. I guess I got the schedule right in front of me. But yeah, like, that's pretty crazy. UCLA's playing at home. Cal's on the road. Arizona. Yeah. Oh, Colorado's going to TCU. So, yeah. I mean, that's Power 5. But this whole, like, Pac-12 teams playing on a group of 5, road games. It's not even like Mountain West with like North Texas. Like, what are you doing? Like, I don't know. I mean, maybe you're trying to recruit or something. But yeah, it's really weird that you're going to do that. And then you got to test. Oregon State's not been very good on the road. They're really good at home. So we'll see what they do. They got a real quarterback now. DJ
I want to see what he looks like. That's the biggest takeaway in that game. I think he didn't really look great a year ago. The year before at Clemson, I thought he was better. So I don't exactly know what happened. I want him to right the ship. I know the family like the kid a lot. I'm rooting for the kid, but I want to see what he looks like because I think that's a massive storyline in the conference.
Well, I'm from San Jose. That's not a vacation like going to Hawaii either. And Oregon State's home stadium being torn in half is probably still better than I think they play at CEFCU Stadium. So it's just so interesting because we're talking about Oregon State maybe contends for the Pac-12 title, and they're opening the season on the road against San Jose State.
Yeah, that's good. Research Stadium is supposed to be awesome. It's finished now. So last year, it was really loud last year up there, half a stadium. I mean, it was really like Lincoln Riley talked about, like, holy cow, it's really loud up there. So, yeah. All right. Well, yeah, but I think someone commented, like, I talk about Pac-12 football more than USC basketball. Yeah, I talk about football. Like, I'm not a big basketball guy.
It's
we'll talk about
USCfootball.com.
USCfootball.com. I cover the Pac-12. USC's playing all these Pac-12 teams. I kind of dive into it all. I want to get you guys to know. So when USC plays these teams, I'm going to know more about them. That's what we're trying to do here. And it was great. Like, I really thank Chris Murray for coming on because he shared a lot of insight about Nevada. So
I'll talk hoops too if people want to talk hoops. Don't worry.
I mean, I will. I go to some games, but like, I would much rather talk about football. So that's what we're doing.
When Shotgun's on the show, that's when you send the basketball questions because he'll have the best answers. Before we get to questions and everything like that, and if you guys still want to call in because your spectrum is down and you can't watch the Utah game like you thought you could, make sure you dial in 512-4-TUNNEL, and we'll get to those at the end of the show. Maybe we can even fill you in on the game since we've got it here on the TV. But what does a successful game look like for USC on Saturday, and what does a concerning performance look like?
I mean, good question. I would say, getting a lot more stops. I'm not concerned about the turnovers; those should come. But I would rather just get stops. And if the Wolfpack is driving, you force a field goal or two, as opposed to every time San Jose State got in the red zone, it was a touchdown. Like, you can't do that. You gotta. If you do give up a big play, you give up a 3rd and 22, it doesn't turn into a touchdown. It seems like once USC made a defensive mistake, there was no stopping the team. San Jose State was going to go all the way and score, even though you got a tackle for loss, holding penalty, 1st and goal, and you lose it there. I'd like to see overcome some adversity on the defensive side of the ball. So if you do give up a big 3rd and long, people aren't hanging their heads and they actually get a stop the next play. That's good. I mean, they had 4 3-and-outs, I believe. I'd like to see a few more of those. Getting in there and keeping it. If you score like 13, 14 points, like, that's fine. And offensively, I'd rather not see the offensive line rotate a lot. And, we might have a question about that, or we could talk about that a little bit. It's your Caleb Williams. Like, I just want to see him. Who's the best offensive line? Put him out there. And if you want to swap a guy or two and try it, that's fine. But the fact that they used 3 different offensive lines in the first 4 drives, like that, I didn't really like that much. So I'd like to see that and then, see the offensive line sort of play better. But, I mean, they're going to score a bunch of points. Not going to give up that many points. If you do that, you're fine. If anything outside of that, I would be a little bit concerned.
Sounds like the offensive line is still going to rotate, according to Josh Henson. He said expect similar results until things get straightened out. And they're really looking hard to figure out this the starting five, and we'll see what happens. But I think there's still going to be some rotation. A successful, good game for me. Let the offense just do what they do. I think even with the offensive line rotating, it was kind of like the San Jose State game. Yeah, there were some hiccups, a few mistakes here and there. That sack at the end of the first half you would have wanted to have back. But I just think the offense is so good that just let them do what they do. I'll be watching the defense. No boneheaded plays, no breakdowns, no 3rd and 22 pickups.
Yes.
That's a success. And then special teams, because it's Nevada. They're a 38-point underdog. They might fake a punt. They might try an onside kick. You got to know what's coming against a team that you're so much better than. I don't want to see any mistakes on special teams either, because we all know how bad USC was on special teams a year ago. That needs to be tightened up, because I think as the year goes on, you're going to see some really good special teams units and some teams that take advantage of USC's weakness in that area if they don't improve.
Yeah, I think the red zone defense thing is pretty interesting. I thought I really would have liked to see, and I said this on Tunnel Vision on Sunday, if they don't call the Bullock holding penalty in the end zone, which Shotgun and I looked at it, it was a pretty weak flag. It kind of looked like he kind of just barely got his hand around the torso of the tight end, but didn't fully grab, and it was kind of just help let me get in position as opposed to make the tight end out of position and let him keep running. I would have really been interested in seeing, could they have gotten the stop from 3rd and goal from the 2? Like, they had that negative tackle for loss on first down, then the incompletion where it was just perfect coverage outside of that Bullock penalty that they ended up throwing on 2nd down. Like, do they get the stop on 3rd down there? What happens if Nick Nash does not just make an incredible catch over Sierra, right? Like, so the touchdowns that were scored, that you can raise some questions. And I also think, are we talking about this USC defensive performance a lot differently if the 3rd and 22 is not converted, and also if they don't allow the touchdown at the end of the first half? Like, those 2 plays alone could have switched basically the entire conversation of the game. So I think it'll be interesting. I think they really can't afford to have those big busted coverages, and if you don't see stuff like that, the 3rd and 22 or the end of the first half touchdown, you start to feel like they can play more consistently and not allow the big plays, and then get a chance to play red zone defense and see if they can get a stop near the goal line. I'm interested to see that. I don't think they're going to give up a lot of points, but I think if you're a fan, you don't want to see them give up many yards as well, because even when they weren't allowing points last year, the teams would kind of move the ball pretty easily and then have a turnover, or then they weren't able to score in the red zone. I think you want to see USC have a defense that doesn't give up many yards either on the drives that the other team doesn't score.
Yeah, I think that's what the one encouraging thing was. There was at least 4 3-and-outs, and then one of them was they picked up a first down and then went 3-and-out right after that, 4-and-out. You got to see that. But when it was a kind of a feast or famine thing. They got the stop, which was great. You get the ball back to and not a lot of time. If you let up a 10-play drive and then there's a short punt, okay, it's almost like scoring. You've just taken a lot of time away from Caleb Williams, and lost field position and all that. But they did get some significant stops. But the problem was when they didn't get that stop, it was like the downhill. You saw the end of the Tulane game, the Utah games. It was just there was no way. This was an avalanche, and you're never going to stop it. And San Jose State did that on the drives they scored. It was just there would be adversity, 3rd and 22, time running out, whatever it was, and you overcome it. Or like Jack was saying, it would have been 3rd and goal. And hey, that's good. It was you knock them back a little bit. You have a real chance to make them make a weird 4th down decision or kick a field goal, and that's a win, right? And they still weren't able to do that. There was always something. You got to when you have a little bit of adversity on the drive, get a stop too. And I think they did a good job of shutting down some drives, but the drives they didn't shut down, they faced adversity and kept melting, and that's what I think you don't want to see that.
Certainly. I'm going to be looking at the linebacking core too. I thought Mason Cobb, I liked what I saw, but at times he was a little feast or famine-y, a little bit trying to make the big play, and it didn't always work. Tackett Curtis, I want to see what he looks like alongside Mason Cobb again. I expect Tackett Curtis to make 1 or 2 big plays in this game after that first game against San Jose State. Don't want to be unfair to him. It was his first game, but he did get lost in the shuffle a little bit. It felt like he was just trying to get upfield, make a play, and the game was a little bit fast for him. So I just want to see development from him. It's only his second game. Again, there's not a ton that's going to change, and we'll just see what happens. But I think he's a fascinating player. Just the linebacking core overall. Lincoln Riley mentioned Rajon Davis today in a question about the linebackers. I think someone asked about the 4 linebackers, and he said, no, it's 5. We have 5 guys we're confident in, and Shane Lee's coming along. So I think we're going to see a little bit more about what the coaching staff thinks of that group, and I hope Eric Gentry is 100%. I know he's battling a little ankle thing this week after picking that up last week, so we'll see what happens there. I'm looking at the linebackers a lot, too.
And just real quick, Justin Spears, who's a reporter in Arizona for the Arizona Republic, I believe, Tucson Star, and the Wildcaster. So he had said that Arizona defensive tackle Tia Savea and former Arizona cornerback Christian Roland-Wallace, who's now at USC, will be suspended for the first half of Week 1 due to their ejections from the Territorial Cup game. And that was the statement I was sent by Jason Shear that read before. So just to clear it up, so it was a defensive lineman from Arizona, Tia Savea, Christian Roland-Wallace, and the 2 ASU players. So it looks like Week 1. My guess would be that the Pac-12 should have told everybody this ahead of time, and Christian Roland-Wallace should have sat out Week 0. I don't think Week 1 is like a magical week. It's just, I think it's supposed to be the first week.
Yeah.
Week 1 is normal, but because college football is weird, we have a Week 0. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what it is. So I think that's just sort of like, I don't even say a loophole. It was just like an oversight. And we're like, well, we said Week 1, so he'll sit out Week 1, which is pretty dumb. So you're like, this happened, last November, and you're like, no, don't sit out the August game. You're going to sit out the September game, so that's good.
Maybe Prophet Brown plays a little bit in his absence. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's very Pac-12. That kind of sums up. It's very Pac-12. You mentioned Tackett Curtis and Mason Cobb on the linebackers, and they were kind of one of the interesting pieces of the depth chart, which was updated yesterday. And it seems like we're going to get a depth chart updated every single week on Wednesday nights, but it's the exact same at the linebacker position. You've got Tackett Curtis and Mason Cobb still slated to start. I think that tells you a little bit more about the health of Gentry and Lee as opposed to Tackett Curtis, because I think if Eric Gentry was 100% healthy, they want him as a starting linebacker. Even I know that they believe in Tackett Curtis a lot. I think we all believe that Tackett Curtis will be a good linebacker for USC. But Eric Gentry just looks like a difference maker on the field. I think they want him to be with the first team. And there were a couple other takeaways from the depth chart as well. It was really, there weren't many changes, but there were some impactful ones.
Yeah, I think Gentry, his first 2 drives, 3 and outs. So he came in and just kind of made a difference. We saw that last year too. Maybe the second half of the season after he got hurt, it wasn't quite the same. But he's someone I would like to see out there,
I want to see Rajon Davis out there. I want to just see him get a couple series. And he got, I guess, more than a couple because he only got 2 last game. I think he was in there for 2 3 and outs as well. He's a guy who I thought looked decent against Tulane when there were so many issues.
He played well,
last season. And in the game last week, I thought he looked good. We have to trust what the coaching staff sees in practice. They're there every day. We're only there for little snippets throughout the week, and there's a reason the guys who are playing. But it seems like in game action, Rajon Davis has looked pretty good, and I want to see what he can do because I think he was a really highly rated, or I know he was a really highly rated recruit, and it just seems like he needs a chance.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. Did you guys talk about we got the Caleb Williams bobblehead?
I don't know if you watched Sunday night's television, but Chris doesn't know how to bobble it.
He doesn't know how to bobble
He was
it?
petting the back of his head. It's like, no, you got to go on the brim of the hat and bounce it. And he was complaining that it's not a very bobbly bobblehead.
It's a little stiff, but you can do this.
It's got to be broken in. The other 2 big things from the depth chart: Raleigh Brown is not on it this week, and moving in at the slot wide receiver position is Michael Jackson. Or no, moving in behind Dorian Singer is Michael Jackson, which means Mekhi Lemon has moved to that last slot backup position.
Yeah, the Raleigh Brown thing is interesting because I really thought he'd be sort of a gadget guy, but you bring in Zachariah Branch, is sort of like what appears to be like even a better version of that. Maybe he's going to take those reps away of what's going to happen. And like I said, we don't get to watch practice. Maybe there's just been some struggling at practice or whatever, but the whole move to wide receiver, I thought he could, fit in the running back spot and get some run there. It's probably easier to get some time at running back, even though, I love Marshawn Lloyd and Austin Jones. That 1-2 punch seems great, and Quentin Joyner seems to be like the change of pace guy coming in. But you figure there'd be something for Raleigh Brown too, but that's kind of a baffling one to me. But I think this is one of the things that's going to happen when you are this stacked, and we were talking about the wide receiver room, and at the very end of camp, when Lincoln Riley says, oh, by the way, Kyron Hudson's like the MVP of camp, you're like, what? Like, if I would have named 6 wide receivers, his name wasn't coming up, and he's the MVP. So I think when you have stuff like that, it creates some problems because there's just a lot of dudes, and there's only one ball to go around. So I'm curious to see what happens there. I'm not claiming to know exactly what's going on, but it's a little, someone as dynamic as he is, you'd like to see him get in there somewhere. But I don't know. It might be like a Zachariah Branch thing that's just sort of like preventing him from getting out there.
And he was hurt in the spring when they wanted to make the position change, and then he came back and started working mostly at receiver, so he got kind of a late start. Not sourced or anything. Maybe he's just still adjusting to learning the position, which would make a lot of sense. It's a new spot for him. I also think Mekhi Lemon having a really good camp and coming on strong, being here in the spring like he was with Malachi Nelson, his high school teammate. I think Mekhi Lemon kind of stuck his claim that, I'm a true freshman and this receiver room is really good, but I need to be on that depth chart. I deserve a spot too. And I think that maybe has something to do with it as well. Mekhi Lemon having a really good camp, bursting onto the scene, showing the coaching staff that he deserves a chance to play. I wouldn't be surprised if that played into it too.
And I think the one thing depth charts usually are crap, so don't worry about that too much. And if you go back and watch like the games from last year, you'd be like, oh my God, this guy's never going to play. And then he's at a huge game the next week. And it's like what we saw Brendan Rice have one catch. It was for a touchdown. He might have 8 catches in this game. Like, we don't know. Like the one thing it does, it changes a lot. And you might see different leading receivers like sort of every week. And that's why when people ask at the beginning of the season, like, is someone going to have this or that, like, it's really hard to say, but I think spreading around is going to be, bigger. And we saw, like, Kyle Ford ended up transferring out, but like he would have nothing games, right? Nothing burger, and then have a huge game. And it would just happen kind of all over. It's funny that he had a big game against UCLA and now he's there. But it's just going to be hard to kind of keep everybody happy, but don't, one game does not make a season. And if you looked at the way the distribution went, it would be like, it looked like a different team sometimes when you watch the games last year.
A really underrated, and sorry to cut you off, Jack, just part of the beginning of the schedule, I'll make this point quick. The fact that USC should beat all these teams, you can play a lot of the freshmen, keep them happy, and then when you play those better teams and you tighten the belt a little bit and don't play those freshmen as much, you can still look at them and say, hey, we promised you playing time, you got playing time, you had a really great beginning of the season. Things have changed now a little bit, but you keep everyone happy in that way, and I think that's important, too, to look at.
Yeah.
And you can know whether some of the guys should redshirt. Like, if someone comes in and you don't really know what they're going to be as a true freshman, maybe they play the first couple games of the season and they blow up. Maybe they you kind of realize, not fully prepared for this yet. Like, you wouldn't be prepared when we have to go to Notre Dame or when Washington comes in. So maybe they decide to redshirt at that point. I think what Ryan is saying, like, we don't know many things for certain. Basically, any game with this wide receiver core, because anyone can go off. But one of the things we do kind of know for sure is that Lincoln Riley likes to have some creative play calls. I find it hard to believe that he doesn't have, a page in the playbook that has Raleek Brown as kind of a gadget weapon. Maybe it's him and Branch on the field at the same time. Maybe it's them two and Mario Williams on the field. Like, it is a weapon that USC can use, but early in the season, it is definitely something interesting and something to follow, especially because like Zachariah Branch isn't even listed as a starter at that position on the depth chart. Like, it goes Williams, then it goes Branch, and then Mekhi Lemon. So that slot position is very, very stacked for USC. But I would imagine sometime later in the season, kind of like how we saw Lincoln Riley do it last year when Notre Dame came in and a little bit more down the stretch. Like, he's got some fun plays in the playbook that include Brown, and maybe at that point in the season we see him a little bit more.
Yeah. I would say this is the early games. Don't worry about it too much. It's something to pay attention to because he's a former 5-star player. Those guys matter, and the fans care about him. And we all do. Like, they're guys on the roster, but someone that you expect to have a big impact in some way. I don't know where he was on our top 30. I don't think I had him super high.
I didn't have him in the top 30 because I felt like someone had to be the odd man out, and I hate to predict that he wouldn't be in it.
So it's your fault.
Yeah, I guess so. My coach was looking at my list. He hacked into my Google Docs. He said, let's do that.
Yeah.
I think that the more important note, though, is that Michael Jackson III is back. Like, he's another one of these guys that could be a big deal. And I think it's interesting. He goes right into the second string spot behind Dorian Singer at one of those wide receiver positions. And on the depth chart, like you've got guys like Brendan Rice, who might be considered to be second string on the depth chart. Then you've got Zachariah Branch, who's listed as second string, and then Michael Jackson the third. So like this is a guy that we could see get a lot of playing time as well when he's healthy. And I know it's a guy that fans were asking about last week because he was kind of the one scholarship receiver that didn't get much run. It's because he just wasn't dressed because he wasn't healthy. But Lincoln did mention he's back this morning, and so I think it'll be interesting to see what he brings to the table. Because if you remember back to that first Utah game, like they don't score if he doesn't take that for a touchdown on a big third down play. So he kind of came off the bench, answered the call, and clearly earned himself some more playing time down the stretch of the season. I believe he was also out for the Pac-12 championship game. So he was banged up a little bit across USC's last 3 games, but I think we'll get a chance to see him on Saturday.
Yeah, he can be a big contributor. Thought, maybe before the season I could say, he might have an impact on special teams. Not anymore, so sorry, that's out. So that you lose some opportunities there because you're no way you're taking Zachariah Branch off of that scenario. But, I don't know, maybe he catches he's an up man and he catches a short kickoff and runs it back or something. But, yeah, he's someone that could have a breakout game. He could be your leading receiver on Saturday. And would you be shocked? Like, no. It's just there's just another line. There's just a lot of guys that can play, and it helps to have Caleb Williams if for whatever reason – just this guy's double covered. He's able to find the people that are open. And if you happen to be open a lot that day, you're probably going to get the ball. And I think Michael Jackson's shown someone he is that can get open, got a good catch radius, be physical. Yeah, he can be your big receiver at any moment. So it's good to get him back. But just like another guy, you got to find a way to get the ball to.
Usually when he's been available, he's been productive. So the fact that he's ready to go tomorrow, I expect him to have somewhat of a role. I don't know if it'll be like a Taj Washington situation where you get 2 targets, but you make the most of it, and one of them's a big touchdown, or if it's Brendan Rice where you don't get as many opportunities, but you make the most of it with a touchdown as well. I don't think he'll get like 5 or 6 targets, but he should get a few.
Yeah.
We only have one question on YouTube. So if you guys are still watching, I know you have questions, so just put them into YouTube so that we can answer them. And the one question is a funny one. It says, instant analysis, will USC on the first play against Utah give up a 70-yard bomb to a backup quarterback?
No, I don't think so.
TBD, but I like what Utah did. That was the first play from scrimmage for them, I think, right? That was first down. So I love that. You worked on it all offseason. The day is finally here. Shotgun snap. We know this play like the back of our hand. Let's just run it and see what happens. And it was beautiful.
It was a bomb. And what you saw, Utah gave up a field goal, gave up a pretty promising drive. Mertz, the quarterback who transferred in from Wisconsin for Florida, they get a penalty, they get a stop and force fumble, miss the field goal, like get into the red zone and actually stepped up and made a play and didn't just give up an automatic touchdown. And I think that's what we want to see from the USC defense, where you're going to give up some drives. And if they go between the 20s, that's fine, but you got to stiffen up. And Utah did a great job doing that, forcing a field goal and then missing it, a gimme field goal, which is great. Like, you need those kind of things to happen. We haven't seen that from this USC defense. So I think there's some good parallels there. Every Day Should Be Saturday tweeted out a picture like from the Utah stands. It's pretty funny. All the red. I'm sorry you guys can't see it, so I guess Jack can pull it up. All the red, and then there's a guy in a Florida jersey walking down the aisle. So it's like looking down. It's an Aaron Hernandez jersey.
Oh.
So that's what you just chose to wear on this road game to Rice Eccles. Like, you're just looking to get heckled. So pretty good.
I had an Aaron Hernandez jersey before it all went down. I grew up a big Patriots fan. He was my favorite player. When they lost to the Giants in that Super Bowl and he did the money vault celebration, that was awesome. I really liked him, but can't like him now after what he did. That was awful.
Multiple murder and things like that. It was not so good.
Football only, football comparison only. A little bit like Deuce Robinson, a tight end who's more of a receiver, big guy, good player.
It's funny, and the whole tight end fad or whatever you want to say, or became why is Kelsey the way he is? Like, the Patriots sort of did that with Gronk and Hernandez. Like, they kind of made it like, hey, by the way, throwing the tight ends, it's pretty cool. You got 2 big athletic ones, that's going to work. But try not to get ones that kill people and stuff.
That's probably a good idea. Yeah. We've got another question on YouTube that said, how vanilla was the offensive game plan in week 1? And if you go back and listen to Tunnel Vision on Sunday night, like, Shotgun brought up a very good point. He, when he was charting the game, only saw USC motion 2 times. Like, that's what Lincoln does to generate his offense. I think that tells you a lot about what he was wanting to show and what he didn't want to give away.
Yeah, I think there was a little vanilla aspect, but I think there were some I mean, there was some Cliff Kingsbury influence, I think, in some of these plays and stuff. But the fact that that really were hockey line substituting the offensive line, I mean, it just makes it makes things a little tougher. So do you think that you're seeing all the bells and whistles? No, you haven't seen that kind of stuff yet. They did some weird option stuff, like maybe get rid of the triple option things where like Caleb Williams running the sideline. I don't know, but yeah, I would think it's more vanilla. We also, if you guys want to call in. We'll go for a little while longer, but 512-4-TUNNEL, if you want to just like talk about what's going on in the show and you're watching live, we'd love to hear from you there.
Definitely. And that was a great point by Shotgun, because I think that just kind of shows what the coaching staff had in mind. They wanted to get a lot of guys reps to see who could play well and earn a spot and who couldn't. There were a lot of spots still up for grabs. And even the guys who you knew were going to be in the mix no matter what happened, even if they didn't play well, just getting those guys some run. I think that was the main objective of that first game on the offensive side of the ball. Just play a lot of guys, get a lot on film. Some of these freshmen, let's see what they can do. And to do that, you got to keep things pretty vanilla, because there's no way everyone's going to be up to speed first game, and you don't want to give too much away against San Jose State. So I didn't think too much about that. That was a great point by Shotgun, and thanks for bringing that up, Jack.
Yeah, there's a specific question for you, Connor, and they asked, does Utah win this week without Cam Rising? Now, I think we've got a little bit of a head start in watching the game, and if you're not able to watch because of Spectrum, Utah just took a 14-3 lead. But, yeah, Connor, this one's directed right at you.
A question, about Utah winning?
Does Utah win this week without Cam Rising?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I have them covering. I got them at 4.5. So
yeah, I did the same.
I think they're going to win by a touchdown. And Nate Johnson just scored. And if you follow California high school football, he went to Clovis High, and that's Northern California. So shout out to California.
Over under 5.5 catches for Branch.
I'll go under. Like, that's just, he'll probably get a few. But I don't think it's a volume thing. It's more about he catches one, and it's like, oh, that was like a 8-yarder. And he catches another one. But then there will be one that's like, oh, okay, he made everybody miss, and that was like the exciting one. So, yeah, I'd probably go under that because I think they'll probably score a lot. And, I think if they get a big lead, you probably don't need to see him that much more. But I would probably take under 5.5 catches for anybody.
Yeah.
That's how I feel, too. If one did go over, I wouldn't be surprised if it was him, but he's another guy. I don't think they want to give too much away. He showed what he can do in that first game. He's clearly going to be a big part of things. I wouldn't be surprised if in the second half he might not even play that much, and you see some of Mekhi Lemon, you see some guys, I say younger guys, Zachariah Branch is one of the younger guys, but you see guys who are behind him on the depth chart like Lemon.
Yeah, I feel like he's going to be a guy by the end of the year that, like, the yards are clearly going to be there, especially, like, all-purpose yards. But I'm not sure he's going to have the most receptions because he's going to get the ball on, a screen that's thrown behind the line of scrimmage and might count as a rush, or he's going to get handed to it on a jet sweep, or he's getting it on a reverse. Like, they're going to get the ball in his hands, but, like, I don't think that's always going to mean he's going to have 6, 7, 8 catches a game.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like the player he's going to be.
Who is going to have that many catches a game?
I would take the whole season, any game, under, like, I would do the under for something like that. But, maybe it changes. But right now, it would be hard to pick which. There might be a guy that gets 6 or 7 catches, but I don't know who it would be every week,
It's not as easy as just saying, Jordan Addison's going to lead the team in catches.
Right,
Like, that was, it was a pretty safe bet most weeks. Like, you could name 8 different guys for Saturday, and I'd be like, man, I could see it.
Yeah, like Zorian Singer, like, could be the dude, Could be Michael Jackson, who just came back. I mean, we just, don't know.
That's part of what makes the offense so scary and why people like us and across the country are so high on USC. That offense, if one guy isn't beating you, someone else probably is. The ceiling is high, and the floor is so high, too, because you have so many talented receivers.
I'd like to see USC commit to the run a little bit more on Saturday as well. I thought there were situations where, like, they could have really stuck with it, especially in the second half when even Marshawn Lloyd was mentioning in the first half he wasn't his best self. Like, when they got him going in the second half, I know they were up by a lot, but I think it'd be really interesting just to show, like, give the offensive line some time to just bully the guys up front, get them some confidence, and just commit to showing you can run the ball. And I know they don't want to give away exotic looks, but I really think against a team like Nevada, even with a rotating offensive line, it's a good way to get those guys a little bit of confidence. Because I think, like, you get Caleb confidence or the wide receivers confident just by getting the balls in their hands and then letting them run with it and doing their thing. Like, you let the offensive line get confident by saying, just shove over the dude that is in front of you, and they're not as good as you, so just go bully them. As Shotgun mentioned, there was a pancake. He's like, ooh, free candy on the ground. Just land on them and let the running backs run right behind him.
I think you would like to see that. You wonder, especially with the new clock rules, did they want to try to throw the ball more and score a little bit? And because you're going to run the clock more when you're running plays like that. But I feel like they can get some chunk plays, and if they are doing that, you're probably more likely to see more runs because they can be as explosive as some of the pass plays. It's great to see Austin Jones find the end zone a couple times. I'd love to see Marshawn Lloyd sort of get there, but I was looking like Quentin Joyner, could have he have broken one of those, especially later in the game. Miller Moss comes in, you're like, ooh, he might be able to break one of these if he gets through the line. Didn't happen, but I think you might see some, especially if they sort of build up a lead. But I like the fact that they let Miller Moss and even Malachi Nelson throw the ball a little bit. You want to get those guys some actual reps, but you want to see them run the ball. And at times when you're going to run, have some real success. And I think the starters and stuff they did. But I'd love to see it, when it gets to garbage time, still being able to run the ball, the offensive lineman back up coming in, push some people around, and get some of that going. So we'll see. We'll see if that ends up coming to fruition. But I think you're going to see they're pretty good. It was almost 50-50 run-pass mix. So see more of that. But I think maybe some more effective rushes in this one.
There certainly will be garbage time. So it's going to be interesting. Is Lincoln Riley really going to continue to Miller get in there and we'll just run the offense as if it's 0-0. Malachi get in there and we'll still throw passes even if we're up big. I think they will. I think when you don't have the preseason, you can't scrimmage. You can only scrimmage against yourself. These reps are valuable. If Miller Moss is a starting quarterback a year from now, you can look at these reps as really instrumental in his development, I think. So that's why they're so important. I look at the run game early in the game being more important than later in the game just because they're not going to try to kill off the game with running the ball. I think they're going to continue to get their backup quarterbacks reps. Yeah,
and it's funny. USC's offense last week was not, I wouldn't say it was super sharp, right? They might have been a C+ sort of offense. And Miller Moss came in with 12 and a half minutes left in the fourth quarter. He still came in pretty early. I think in this game you could see him in the third quarter. If it goes the way I think it's going to go, you're probably going to see him coming in then. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunities. It's great to play all those guys and not just get guys in for a couple of plays. Get in, there was 40-something guys that played at least 10 plays. That's the ultimate measuring stick for success in this game. You get to do that, but it's more. Last week they did it sort of they just rotated a bunch of dudes. This way you want to get people in because there's no reason to have the starters in anymore. I think you have some more opportunities to do that.
Yeah, I think this will probably be the USC's least contested game of the season. This is probably going to be, the tunnel vision where we're speaking the least about the given opponent and not even really a thought about a potential upset creeping into mind. But I know that we do the staff picks for the site. Did you guys want to get into predictions here on the podcast or leave that for the article?
Yeah, no, we can do them here. I think I think we normally do them on Thursdays, Jack. We could do that.
All right. Well, throw in, I want to add one more thing because I know that we've kind of already thought about it for the article.
Sure.
Throw in a team MVP. I would assume that we would all agree Zachariah Branch was the MVP of Week 1. I want to hear your prediction for who you think it could be in Week 2.
Well, we got to think about that. All right, so I got to let it clear. There's a 38-point spread. I think USC is going to cover this one. The over/under was 66 or something in that range, and I'm going to go over. I really feel like USC can put up 60 points in this one. And my feeling is it's going to be more of maybe a touchdown and 2 field goals sort of thing, a 66-13, something like that. I think it's going to be, a significant blowout there. Scoring, getting more stops, getting more sacks, more tackles for loss, more 3-and-outs, getting more stops, just getting the ball back to the offense. If the defense could have done that a little bit more, they could have scored 60 against San Jose State easily. It's they had to score a lot of points late in the game. In the second half. I feel like you're going to have more opportunities to do that in the first half. 21-14 at half is not going to be what the score is for this one. So I think if it's, 35-7 at half, okay, you're rolling and probably going to score a lot of points. MVP, that's a good one. Yeah, you know what? I think I'll go with Marshawn Lloyd. I think he just has a big game and he gets 3 scores or something. I'll go with him.
Here's what I wrote for the website. It's a monster spread, but USC will rotate fewer players in this game, according to Lincoln Riley, unless he was bluffing and just said that. Nevada is much worse than San Jose State, too. That's a recipe for a big win. The model I use for gambling has USC winning by 39.8 points. So that would cover the spread. I'm going to go outside the box with my MVP. He was the PFF highest-graded defensive player for USC last week, Jamil Muhammad. The one position on the offensive line for Nevada that they have some experience at is left tackle. Muhammad will be on the other side of the line going up against the right tackle and maybe a tight end at that rush end spot. He almost had a strip sack against San Jose State. He was credited with a forced fumble. I think he's going to be really active. Look for him to force a fumble, maybe recover a fumble, some tackles for loss. I just think when the offense, if the game gets out of hand and we see so much rotating, and Zachariah Branch, he could go do something crazy again and be the MVP again. But I'm going to pick a defensive guy to be my MVP, and it's Jamil Muhammad. I think he's going to be causing a lot of trouble for Nevada, so I'm going with him.
Well, I got to think of everything now. I was going to go Marshawn Lloyd, and then you took Marshawn Lloyd, so I go, I could go defense, and I was like, Jamil Muhammad, he had a pretty good first game, so I got to think about that. But I'm going with USC to cover 2, 38 points. It is a big spread, but I just – San Jose State, they almost beat by, they almost covered against San Jose State. Nevada is a far worse team than San Jose State is, and I think that, like, San Jose State, maybe they're not, like, that much better of a team, but, like, a quarterback can do a lot for you, and I don't see Nevada hanging with USC at the quarterback position as much as Chevin Cordero did. So I'm taking USC to cover. I'm pretty confident on that one. MVP, it's hard because I don't want to pick a receiver just because, like, it could be any of them.
Right.
I'm not going to take Caleb Williams because I think he's going to play like 2.5 quarters, maybe 3. He's the reigning Heisman Trophy winner. I'll go Kalen Bullock. I think you see a Kalen Bullock interception. You could see potentially 2. I don't know if 1 interception gets you MVP if it's a 66 to like 13 win, but I want to go on the defensive side of the ball, so I'll go Kalen Bullock. Maybe he takes it back for 6 and that gets him MVP.
Sweet.
I think he'll have a bounce-back game. Not that he played that poorly against San Jose State, but I didn't think he was particularly good for an All-American the way that that's what he is going into the season. So I could see him being a little bit motivated, wanting to play better to begin the year. I could see that definitely happening, Jack.
Yeah, I think he was credited with 2 of the missed tackles. He also had that holding penalty in the end zone, which I know like PFF grades, they don't like that. But yeah, it'll be interesting because I don't think we're going to see like a super complex passing attack from Nevada. So no. I think his job will be a little bit easier today than it will be, say, against Washington specifically, where you have to worry about all these different dudes, coming across your face, maybe going deep. It's going to be interesting. But I think we can all be pretty confident USC will cover. But who knows? We were wrong last week, so maybe we're wrong again. And if we are wrong again, I think we're coming in here on Sunday and we're having an interesting discussion.
Yeah, they were covering in the fourth quarter late, but they weren't on pace to really cover at all. But to me, if Lincoln Riley wanted to win that game by more, he would have. I think the whole rotating thing, especially in the beginning, that's why it was 21-14. And then once they got rolling, it changed in the second half. But I think a lot of us felt that USC was just going to come out and be like, we need to get this terrible taste out of our mouth, last 2, and let's just go out there. But they really looked at it as a chance to like audition a bunch of guys, and that's not your ideal situation for covering a huge spread. That's not what his concern is. We're supposed to like guess what his mindset was. His mindset wasn't to go in and try to win by 40. It was to play a lot of guys.
And maybe that's why he's the coach and we're all sitting here. I will ask you this, Ryan. And maybe you haven't looked, but did anyone pick Nevada to cover this week?
Not that I've seen yet. Not everyone's put.
We can't go 0 for 2 as a collective site. We'll lose subscribers. So.
Yeah, no, we'll be good.
We have a caller in right before the buzzer. So
nice.
How about we end with Dave from Iowa? So
of course, Dave.
Go to our caller. Hi, Dave. You're on Tunnel Vision.
Hey, guys. Dave from Iowa, as always. What can I say? I'm basically a part-time worker for Ryan these days. But anyway, I just had a couple of things to say. One, with USC's new AD hire, so just curious, do you guys expect 21 different sport national championships in a span of 3 or 4 years? And if that's the case, if she doesn't get it done, does she get fired or move on to the next thing? And then second, just curious, Ryan, you alluded to it, I believe in one of the previous podcasts in the last week or so, in terms of, hey, third down defense improvement. I'm just curious, what would you guys rather see? A top-notch, a top-notch third down defense with mediocre, interceptions and fumbles, or would you rather see what we saw last year in a sense of, had the turnovers, but when they panicked and didn't get those turnovers, that forced them to miss tackles, which, obviously, basically meant, they couldn't get down, they couldn't get off the field on third downs and stuff. So just curious, what do you think?
Thanks, Dave. We can probably do the second one first. Yeah, I mean, I said this from the beginning. It was great that you got a lot of turnovers last year, but I just wanted to see stops. I wanted to see big plays on third down. Good defensive teams can do that. They can rise up and make a play. It was hard to remember, in the last few weeks of the season, outside of that Corey Foreman interception, like there was no stops. Like what UCLA DTR was going to score. Cam Rising was going to score.
Yeah.
Tulane, they were going to score. Like there was just, it was downhill, no, all gas, no brakes. And there was no way to slow them down. And I think you need to be able to do that every once in a while. Georgia gave up a crap load of points to Ohio State. It just, that happened. It's going to happen, but you can get a key stop here or there. And it just, when it came to crunch time, there were no stops to be had. So I'd much rather see third down stops.
I knew you were going to say that. You've been talking about that all year. And just, looking at last season, they got all the turnovers in the world. What do they lead the whole Division I or whatever? And where to get them? It got them a good season, but this year the expectation is a great season, and I think that starts with getting stops on third down. Are the turnovers nice to have? Of course. And are they important? Of course. But I think last year showed you can't rely on them because in big spots they're not going to pop up the way a consistent third down stop. If you do that throughout the year, you can do that later in the year. Turnovers sometimes can kind of be like a freak play.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like they would always come like very, very late in a long drive, which then it's like, you're getting the ball back, but like it's already, the other team's taking a lot of time off the clock. They've obviously eaten up yards and gotten closer, and it was kind of like always when they would get the turnovers, it was in that this is our last chance to get it or else they're scoring, and then maybe they did. I remember back to the Stanford game. Like, Stanford was right on the doors of scoring a touchdown, and then it just happened to be a turnover. So that's like, I would still consider that to be a negative drive for the USC defense, even though they got the ball back. So I think you'd much rather see those third down stops maybe a little earlier on in a drive than a turnover late in a drive as well, which is when USC would tend to get them. When it comes to the national championships thing, I don't think Jen Cohen's going to get fired if all 21 sports don't win a national championship in her first couple of years. But, I thought it was interesting, and I think, as an athletic director, you kind of have to say that you want all 21 sports to succeed, but Jennifer Cohen had some pretty good smaller sports at Washington, so I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, and USC does well. I think you want to be nationally competitive in sports. We've seen, the big ones are, football, basketball's got a lot better. Seems like baseball's turned around. Like they can, they should have made the postseason last year and didn't. Like you're winning in like beach volleyball. Both water polos are really good. I think tennis, if I'm not mistaken, is good. Women's golf is really good. I think they finished second this year. Men's golf not as good. Like men's volleyball not as good. So there's some sports that they're not very good. And I think what her job is to come in and get men's volleyball and like men's golf and whatever some of the other sports are really competitive again, so that they're nationally ranked and they're competing for championships. Not that you have to go win, but you don't want to be a crappy team, especially, these are programs that have won national championships in the past. And if they stink now, you're like, okay, you can win, like get back there. Track has come through and it's a lot, that's more difficult to win at a place like USC, but there's opportunities there to get some of these teams that sort of stink right now to be better. And not that you have to go out and win, like it was great that lacrosse comes in and is nationally competitive right away. Like women's soccer has been really good. I think they got a big road win against like top 4 Duke or whatever. So you're fine. Like if women's soccer doesn't win a national championship, they're still like, hey, they're beating like a top 5 team. Like this is a good, really good program. Some of the sports programs aren't, and you might need to make some firings and do hirings or whatever. But I think that's what you sort of focus on, so that you give yourself a chance in every spot. So you have the right coach in there, and maybe they get the right recruit or the right transfer, and then all of a sudden it works. Like you're not going to win. I mean, you're not going to do what Dane Blanton's doing and win every year. That's going to be really tough to do. But you want to be competitive in a lot of those sports. So, yeah, I don't think they're firing her if she doesn't win 21 national championships.
Yeah, I agree. A good AD won't lead immediately to wins, but what a good AD can do is put the programs at the school in a position to win. It can get them on the right track. It can make sure everything's moving in the right direction. At the end of the day, it's the coaches, the player. The AD can only do so much, but a good AD just won't screw things up, which is something that you've talked a lot about, Ryan, how some ADs in the past maybe screwed things up a little bit more than you would have liked your AD to do. So the reason I'm so high on the hire is because Jen Cohen has so much experience and knows what she's doing. And USC is in a position where you just can't screw it up. If you just put everyone in a position to succeed, you're going to have a lot of success, and I think she's going to do that.
Yeah.
If we flash forward a year from now and no one's talking about Jen Cohen, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
You don't want your athletic director to be like in the limelight all the time, being super talked about. We've seen where that's gotten USC. Even, a guy like Mike Bohn. We on the podcast last year, like before all this stuff obviously came out, we're talking about how Mike Bohn had made some great hires, had done such a good job, and then at the end it ended up kind of falling in a way that USC wouldn't have wanted it to. So if Jen Cohen is just out of the way and you're not hearing about her, I think for USC that's a good thing, because she's working behind the scenes and she's not doing anything to put herself in the spotlight for something negative.
The only time you want to hear from your AD is when they're like the Ohio State AD, someone who's just revered, and every time they say something, it's news. I agree with Jack. When it's not that situation, just stay behind the scenes and do what you got to do.
Yeah, if you're talking about the referees, it's probably bad. If you're talking about the offensive line,
if you're getting
it's probably
penalties.
bad. Yeah. But yeah, if you're talking about the AD, a lot of times it's bad because you're like, what's going on here? But I think it's the behind the scenes, like Jack mentioned. One of the things when you're in a position of power, there's a lot of decisions that need to be made. And when we would see some of these decisions, you're questioning them. And it's not always, a lot of times you make a decision and it doesn't lightning strikes and everything blows up. It's like getting my analogy is always like you get a parking ticket. You get one parking ticket, doesn't really matter that much. You get 10 of them, and then all of a sudden a boot's on your car. Like, it took a while to pile up. You made a whole bunch of bad decisions by parking in the wrong spot, not paying them, and just throwing them away or whatever you're doing. And then all of a sudden, boom, like all those bad decisions kind of came and like reared their head. And I think that's what happened with USC. The hires, like the day that you extend Clay Helton or the day that you make him the permanent head coach, and we all question the decision and are like, that doesn't seem like a smart thing. Lightning didn't strike that day. Like, the football program didn't erode, but over time it did. And you're like, remember when we said, like, why did you do this? Like, why did you make this decision? How did this happen? Why did you make the John McKay Center so it had the exact number of offices that Lane Kiffin's staff had in 2010 instead of thinking about the future? Well, now you got to do it all over again. There's a lot of decisions that you make back then that most of them we were like, why did you do this? And it doesn't. The negative results don't happen right away. They happen over time. And so, like, to Jack's point, you're the athletic director. You got to make some really good decisions behind the scenes that no one's hearing about. And when they're good ones, maybe it doesn't, like, you don't get a national championship that week. But 3 years from now, you have, whatever, Dane Blanton, winning 3 straight national championships. Like, someone made a good decision somewhere. Maybe they got lucky, whatever it is. And then down the road, it works. So you hope that Jen Cohen's behind the scenes making those right decisions, like planting, and you're, watering all the seeds and everything. And then down the road, you have all these crops like, oh, wow, this is amazing. You made this good hire, you made this good hire. Now you got, whatever, all that stuff going on. So it's those decisions, if you're the CEO of a company, all those big decisions you make, it's not instantaneous. We see some, like, Elon Musk making all these things about what's going on with X. Like, some of that stuff just impacts everybody right away. But most of these are behind the scenes decisions that sort of bad ones pile up and then turn to crap, or good ones pile up and then you bear fruit from them.
I love the parking ticket analogy. I think that's that's awesome.
I didn't follow. Can you do a food analogy, though? I thought you were known for the food analogy.
I do the food analogy. But the decision one, I'm always just, when it comes to leadership, it's just like you have to make good, solid, sound decisions. And sometimes, when you hire somebody that has no experience, like, oh, he's my buddy. What happened at Arizona State? Like, you hired an agent to be your athletic director. Like, that seems kind of questionable. The agent hires his former client to be the head coach, someone that hasn't been around college football since the 80s and hadn't coached in like a decade. You're like, that doesn't seem like it's going to be a good idea. Oh, and now, now you're like a bowl ban later. You stunk on the field. All these people left. Like, yeah, those were horrible decisions that you made years ago, and then they come to fruition. And then you have to realize, like, Ray Anderson should not be the damn athletic director at Arizona State, and you still haven't fired him yet. So it's like more, and a lot of times you make that bad decision, and then you sort of like try to make other decisions to prove that your first decision was correct when it was not, and it's obvious to everyone's not. I mean, Michael Crow, the Arizona State president, give him credit for they are now an AAU school. Like, they've raised their academic profile, which is his main job. But when it comes to athletics, like, he has stunk. He was the, Michael, what am I blanking on? Who's the, I'm going on this rant.
Michael who?
No, I was going to say Michael Scott, Larry Scott. Like, Michael
Larry
Scott,
yeah.
He was the Larry Scott champion for a year, and till the very end, and was saying that Kleopkov's Apple deal was like this Star Trek 23rd century kind of. It stunk, but he was like, no, it's great. He wanted to do everything he could to keep the Pac-12 together because if it dissolved, it shows him backing Larry Scott was awful. He was like fighting that to the very end, even though everyone in the world knew that he was the champion of Larry Scott and Larry Scott was the worst. But he would not admit it. And he would just like that bad decision he made to just, I'm going to stand by Larry Scott. Let's extend him and all that stuff. That killed the conference. Like you essentially killed the conference. And he wouldn't admit that it was wrong. So it's those bad decisions and then the egos involved where you will go to the nth degree. We see this on the peristyle all the time. If someone says, Mekhi Lemon's going to be the greatest wide receiver in USC history, he's going to blow Zachariah Branch out of the water. Like someone will say that, like when he's a junior or something. I mean, he might be, but then you see Zachariah Branch blow up, and then everyone's like, "You're an idiot!" But they'll say, "No, Lemon got screwed. It was political." Like they were going to fight it to the end, and like Zachariah Branch could win 3 Heismans, and the guy will still say Lemon would be better if it was in a different situation. Like they'll never admit that their initial thing was wrong. We could just say, man, I thought Lemon was going to be good, but Branch is just really good too. Maybe Lemon's going to be great. I'm not no disparaging Mekhi Lemon or anything. I'm just going to give you an example of we see this on the message boards all the time. People make these decisions. They're like, I think the sky is orange, and they will fight you to the death to tell you that the sky is still orange when you can see it's blue, and everyone's pointing it's blue, and they're sending you pictures and videos. But the guy's like, I declared it on the internet, so I'm going to go down with this ship, and that's like what Michael Crow was doing. And that's what USC athletic directors were doing until they got fired, and we never hear from them again. There's my rant.
What a rant! One of the most important things in life is being able to admit when you're wrong. So some people in the peristyle could learn that for sure.
It's like when you do something stupid as a kid, and your parents come to you, and you're split the reaction. You lie. And then each time they come to you about it, you lie, and it's like eventually they're going to find out. Yeah. So you're only making it worse for yourself by lying about it now.
Like with the crumbs.
Utah is dominating Florida right now.
Oh yeah,
and it's about to go to halftime. So that might be our cue to finish up. Do
you
guys
I think that's
have
perfect.
any more thoughts about this game on Saturday?
Hopefully see you guys out at the Coliseum on Saturday. We got a special treat for you coming up. We'll have a special player interview on Sunday. So make sure check out uscfootball.com for that. We'll probably be up on YouTube. And if you don't have any tailgating plans, stop by the House of Victory tailgate. I went last week. They had like Mark Sanchez there, Boogie Ellis. It was a lot of fun. Went in there. Food was impeccable. It was really good. So if you go to House of Victory over at check out the tailgate. I'll be there for the beginning of it. And, they do it. I mean, the food was amazing. And I saw they had really good signature cocktails and stuff. I wasn't drinking, but whatever. Maybe I had one. But there was like, but yeah, food, Rex Steakhouse from Redondo Beach, which we're in Redondo Beach right now. It was amazing. So if you don't have a tailgate to go to, definitely go check it out. And there'll be, former players there. Frosty Rucker was there. I got to talk to him for a little while. So that was cool. But yeah, go to the Coliseum. Enjoy the game. It's on Pac-12 Network. So you pretty much got to go if you want to watch it.
My final thought on the game, I saw someone asked about the running clock. I think ESPN did something about how the clock no longer stopping on first downs outside of 2 minutes. It decreases the number of plays in a game by 5%, which decreases scoring. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago in the Peristyle podcast. I was not prepared for a running clock question, so I just said, it doesn't matter. But it does matter. I think if USC doesn't cover, that's going to be one of the reasons why, because they just didn't get enough of an opportunity. Sounds like an excuse, but in these big spread games, that certainly plays a part. So if I go 0-2 and they don't cover again, I'm blaming the running clock. I'm blaming the rules.
It's fewer plays. It's just you can't screw up. Like you can't give up that touchdown with the fewer plays.
Yeah.
Giving up the touchdown at the end of the
half.
Play
better defense, please.
It's kind of killer. So you don't have as many opportunities to screw up if you have that running clock.
Yeah, well, and it
what a way to look at it.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it'll help USC. They might end up hurting them because with Lincoln Riley, like the problem with the offense sometimes is they score so fast that when the defense allows the same 7 points, but it takes a couple more minutes, like you're having less drive. So it'll be interesting, but I think that's something that we're going to see it ebb and flow. Like maybe one game it has an effect, another game it doesn't. Lincoln Riley said on Trojans Live that didn't have too much of an effect on him and the way he's coaching the game, but he also joked like the first quarter felt super fast, and I would agree with that as well. So you'll see some quarters that feel the same length, some quarters that just really fly by, and I think it'll be interesting to see down the stretch of the games to how it matters. But
and it's a disadvantage to the more talented teams because you want it. The more talented you are, you want more plays. It's like if you want like a poker analogy, if Jack is a way better poker player than me, and I play one hand against him, like he's probably 60-40 to win. But if we play 100 hands, he's going to win a lot more because he's got more opportunities to make more decisions. I'm making poor decisions. He's making good ones. If you only have the opportunity on one hand, I get dealt a really good hand. He's not going to beat me. Like, he can't bluff me out of my good hand. But if he gets 100 hands, he can beat me when he has worse hands than me because he's going to be a better player. So you want more opportunities when you have the more talented team, when you're the better team. And when you have this running clock thing, you're not going to get as many opportunities. So it's sort of like evens the playing field. It's not evens it, but it'll make it a little bit closer.
Let's go for another half hour so we can get some more analogies.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is the show of analogies. Oh, boy.
Cameron Timpson says, as someone that is originally from Nevada, it's not Nevada, it's Nevada, which is what I've been saying, but everyone's saying Nevada. So, Cameron, I was with you, but then I got convinced to change. I don't know. Can it go either way, I guess? Can we all get along?
Nevada?
I think I said different every time now, and I'm thinking about it, but all right.
I think I've always said Nevada, but then I saw Stephen A. Smith on ESPN who was reacting to USC's schedule. Wasn't a big fan of it. He's like, Nevada? And so then I've been saying half the time I've been saying Nevada.
If he says Nevada, I would say Nevada.
It's an East Coast, West Coast thing. On the East Coast, I think people say Nevada. That's where I get it from, and out here it's Nevada.
But he's saying if he's from Nevada and he's saying it should be Nevada, not Nevada.
I read both those the same way with the H or the A. Like I feel like you could tell me that the first one is Nevada. You could also tell me that it's Nevada.
It's AH, like you're getting your.
Yeah, but think about like a sheep. If they were writing like ba, it's like BAAAAA. So
yeah.
like I could say it's the same way. But anyways, if you've listened to this show for this long that we're talking about how to pronounce Nevada or Nevada, make sure you're leaving a like because you guys are our real fans, and make sure you can leave comments. And we'll be back here on Sunday to talk after the game. I think that'll be a little bit more interesting. We'll have a lot more to break down as opposed to Nevada's not a great team, and we'll just kind of have to see what USC does against them. But yeah, any other thoughts before we wrap this one up?
Sounds good, Jack. We went an hour and a half with not too much going on, so love it.
It's all your analogies. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. For Ryan Abraham and Connor Morrissette, I'm your host, Jack Smith. Thank you for watching Tunnel Vision, and we will see you on Sunday.